Meeting number 31 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the motion adopted in committee on Thursday, February 17th, the committee is meeting to study the invocation of the Emergency Measures Act and related measures. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be available via the House of Commons website. So you're aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Today's meeting is also taking place in the webinar format. Webinars are for public committee meetings and are available only to members, their staff, and witnesses. Members enter immediately as active participants. All functionalities for active participants remain the same. Staff will be non-active participants and can therefore only view the meeting in gallery view. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Given the ongoing pandemic situation and in light of the recommendations from the health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19th, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, all those attending the meeting in person are to maintain a 2-meter physical distancing, must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room, and it's highly recommended that the mask be worn at all times, including when seated. Must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the provided hand sanitizer at the room entrance. As the chair, I'll be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I thank members in advance for their cooperation. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming proceedings. The raised hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used at any time if you wish to speak or alert the chair. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the Board of Internal Economy's guidelines to mask use and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you're on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the proceedings and verification officer. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain a consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they're participating virtually or in person. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses. From the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, their president, Flavio Volpe, is with us. Welcome. From the Canadian Credit Union Association, their president and chief executive officer, Martha Durden, and also their vice president of government relations, Michael Hatch. And from GoFundMe, we have president Juan Benitez and general counsel Kim Wilford. So at this time, the witnesses will have an opportunity to provide remarks for up to 5 minutes, and we will start with the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, Mr. Flavio Volpe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for inviting me. Always appreciate the opportunity to have this forum and this platform. In November 2021, Canada reciprocated an October announcement by the U.S. that unvaccinated cross-border truck drivers would no longer be allowed to cross the border without requiring quarantine by January. Our industry expressed concern for the effect that it might have in an already tough time on the mode of transport we rely on most for the critical export corridors that underpin our livelihoods. At the time, I said to the Toronto Star, trucking is the lifeblood of our industry. Cars get shipped by rail, parts get shipped by truck. This is hitting the industry at a time when supply chains are having the most difficulty they've had in 100 years. In fact, about half the production we make a year is exported that way, $18 billion worth or so in a normal year. As the deadlines approached and affected drivers began to make themselves heard in public, I was circumspect in interviews with the Automotive News saying, what will happen here is if we're down by 20% of truckers, industries like ours will have to bid up our access to available drivers. In a Sun media interview, I expanded on my point and my concerns. I said, the trucker shortages, now exacerbated by the mandates, will cost part makers in both Canada and the US. Our members will now be competing with those wanting to move all kinds of goods as they seek space on trucks and drivers. I was and still am a strong supporter of vaccinations, but we caution that governments have to be sensitive and flexible to what is happening. It was always going to be a choppy transition, but the public health leadership in this country had, by most quantitative measures, placed Canada favorably in comparison to the United States and other major countries around the world. We took this latest hurdle as something we could absorb for the greater good. In March 2020, when the COVID pandemic caught everyone unprepared, it was auto parts companies that initiated the largest peacetime mobilization of Canada's industrial capacity in response. Our call to action was echoed immediately by government, and within 2 weeks, parts companies began to make masks, shields, ventilators, vaccine coolers, swabs, and gowns, dozens of which did so without purchase orders. Our industry served as the prime example for extraordinary civic duty, and we've done so proudly for the last 2 years. This is the context in which we experienced the lawless blockade of the Ambassador Bridge by anti-government actors who cloaked themselves in a phony truckers' cause that shut down Canada's most important cross-border asset for the first time since 9/11. That singular event in February, which seemingly paralyzed governments and law enforcement as well, cost the highly integrated automotive sector approximately $1 billion in unrecoverable production, and then cost approximately 100,000 Canadian automotive workers similar shift and pay losses. On a regular day, about 10,000 actual truck drivers pick up and deliver $50 million in goods from Canadian parts companies and deliver them to their US customers. They return with a similar load from US factories to Canadian automakers. Those drivers were forced to stay home unpaid, while people who pretended to be them forced them to lose actual work. Authentic political actors in Ottawa who shamelessly egged on their social media followers, and then was carried out by a couple of dozen macroeconomically illiterate followers. Its cost to Canadian industry and shipments is dwarfed by its cost in goodwill. It was unfortunate that a court order secured on February 14th, 2022 by the APMA as lead plaintiff was required to kickstart the enforcement of the law in Windsor. We need to have a better overall mitigation plan amongst all levels of government in place to avoid future freedom barbecues from blockading critical public infrastructure. Next week, I will meet with the White House for the first time since this blockade ended to talk about how we continue to build an electrified Canada-US auto sector together. I thought it best to let the dust settle and the embarrassment to subside before I return to Washington to lecture Americans about their trade obligations to Canada. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Volpe, and I also want to say congratulations. It's your birthday today, I understand. So for taking this time on this special day of yours for joining our committee as one of our witnesses today. So happy birthday!
Thank you. We can't stop time, so I appreciate you marking it.
That's right. We can't stop time. And now we're moving to the Canadian Credit Union Association for their remarks for up to 5 minutes, please.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee, for the invitation to speak with you today. My name is Martha Durden. Je suis la présidente et chef de la direction.
President and CEO of the Canadian Association of the Cooperatives. And with also the Vice President of Government Affairs.
Credit unions and Caisse Populaire outside Quebec. Credit unions contribute nearly $7 billion to Canada's economy by providing deposit loan and wealth management services to over 5.9 million Canadians. Collectively, credit unions and regional centrals employ nearly 30,000 people and manage over $280 billion in sector assets. Credit unions are cooperatives. In other words, the people who bank with credit unions are the same people who own them. Being accountable to our member owners as opposed to shareholders result in customer service that is second to none. We consistently rank at the very top of surveys of customer satisfaction for financial services. For rural members of this committee, it's important to note that in almost 400 communities across Canada, credit unions are the only on-the-ground providers of financial services to households and small businesses. We worked closely with financial officials in the RCMP last month as the Emergencies Act measures were rolled out. We'd like to thank the minister and her team for keeping in regular contact with us in the heat of the crisis. And we're particularly grateful to senior Finance Canada officials who on short notice provided in-depth briefing to our members on the financial components of the measures. It was attended by over 600 representatives from across Canada. We also have constructive feedback to provide on other elements of the process. In the early days of the crisis, there was the impression, not uncommon in our dealings with the federal government, that the large 6 banks were consulted or informed days before credit unions and other financial institutions. Credit unions represent almost half the financial sector in some provinces and millions of Canadian consumers. We need to be at the table in discussions with Ottawa at the same level as the federally regulated banks in all matters that directly impact our operations and our members, particularly in a time of crisis like this. When the measures were first announced, it was very unclear to whom the financial sanctions applied. Eventually, it became clear, and that they were aimed at a very small list of individuals and entities. However, in the early days, there was some degree of panic among some Canadians that their accounts may be frozen due to things like small donations to the convoy. In those important days, the government was less than clear about the intended targets of financial measures under the Emergencies Act. Many of our members expressed this concern, and many Canadians made significant withdrawals from credit unions as a result, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands, and on a few occasions in the millions of dollars. And while these withdrawals did not cause liquidity issues at all for credit unions, staff had to manage many very unhappy members. Better and much clearer communications from the government could have mitigated this. One credit union leader wrote to us, "We had a tremendous amount of members very seriously concerned regarding the government's ability to seize accounts. It brought forward a large sense of mistrust with the government and that they could seize individual accounts." The government also granted a significant level of discretion to financial institutions regarding those whose accounts to freeze. This further contributed to confusion and to possibly an uneven application of the financial components of the measures. Many would have appreciated further guidance from the government on precisely which accounts would be frozen. In the end, a relatively small number of credit union accounts were frozen, and for a short period of time, our members froze a total of 10 accounts with a total value of less than $500,000. We hope this feedback is helpful to the government and to the committee. We're happy to take your questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And while I know it's not the purpose of this committee's current work, I just wanted to say that credit unions do stand with our Ukrainian Canadians. We have Ukrainian credit unions in Canada and condemn in the strongest terms the war against the people of the Ukraine. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. And thanks for those remarks. And we do have one of those Ukrainian credit unions right here in my riding of Mississauga East Cooksville that we're very proud of. So thank you for your opening remarks and for being with us here today. We are now moving to GoFundMe for up to 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It is our pleasure to join you all today to discuss important matters related to the Freedom Convoy fundraiser and social fundraising in Canada. My name is Juan Benitez, and I'm the president of GoFundMe. I am joined by Kim Wilford, GoFundMe's general counsel. On behalf of everyone at GoFundMe, we want to acknowledge the impact of the so-called Freedom Convoy on the citizens of Canada, in particular the residents of Ottawa, and each of you. GoFundMe is the world's most recognized and most trusted fundraising platform. Our mission is to help people help each other with the goal of being the most helpful place in the world. We are humbled that GoFundMe has become a noun, synonymous with receiving help and assisting communities. That impact is far-reaching as we have delivered over $17 billion in assistance to communities in 19 countries since the company began over a decade ago. In Canada, we are now delivering well over $200 million in community assistance each year, including for significant events such as the Humboldt Broncos fundraiser in 2018 that raised over $15 million, as well as the hundreds of other campaigns that help friends and family members with their needs and dreams every day. Before we provide a timeline of events for the Freedom Convoy fundraiser, I would like to thank Ottawa authorities, notably Interim Police Chief Bell, Mayor Watson, and their teams for their collaboration and transparency. I also want to say that all our decisions and policies are guided by our terms of service, which are posted publicly and outline what is permissible and what is prohibited on our platform. Fundraisers relating to misinformation, hate speech, violence, and more are prohibited by our terms of service. The Freedom Convoy fundraiser was created on January 14th. We began actively monitoring it the next day based on significant fundraiser activity. Our initial analysis concluded that the fundraiser was within our terms of service and could remain active. On January 27th, we initiated TD Bank has applied to an Ontario court to surrender the money that was in the organizer's account. Following this disbursement, public statements from the fundraiser organizer began to shift in tone. And on February 2nd, we suspended the fundraiser. This effectively meant that all future donations and withdrawals were paused. From February 2nd through February 4th, we heard from local authorities that what had begun as a peaceful movement had shifted into something else. They shared reports of violence, harassment, misinformation, and threatening behavior by individuals associated with this movement. During this time, we also commenced a review of where donations were coming from. Our records show that 88% of donated funds originated in Canada, and 86% of donors were from Canada. On February 4th, following concerning dialogue with the fundraiser organizer and her team, as well as continued updates from law enforcement and local authorities, it became clear the fundraiser no longer complied with our terms of service. We removed the fundraiser from our platform and, on the following day, initiated refunds to all donors via our payment processing partner, including all transaction processing fees, tips, and the $1 million already paid out. When the Emergencies Act was invoked on February 14th, we immediately pre-registered with FINTRAC as was required at that time. GoFundMe aspires to be the benchmark for responsible operations in the social fundraising industry. Over 80 of our 400 employees are dedicated to policy creation and enforcement, data privacy, information security, regulatory compliance, and prevention of payment fraud, financial crimes, and money laundering. We employ industry experts and consider ourselves experts and innovators in these areas. Beyond the investments we make at GoFundMe for trust, safety, and compliance, there are multiple layers in the regulatory framework surrounding social fundraising. All donations are processed, held, and paid out by our payment processing partners. This means that GoFundMe does not directly interact with or hold any funds collected from donors, nor are we ever able to redirect those funds. While GoFundMe is not currently required to report to FINTRAC, it is our understanding that in Canada, the authorized payment method used for donating and the financial institution that receives the donated funds are both regulated by FINTRAC. In summary, GoFundMe controls, payment processor controls, and banking system controls are the three layers involved in social fundraising operations focused on ensuring regulatory compliance. We believe responsible action is core to social fundraising, and we run our business accordingly. We proactively invest in the relevant processes, teams, and tools to be the industry leader in this area. There will always be opportunities to learn and improve, and we hope the committee acknowledges the responsible actions we took in close consultation with local authorities. While this committee and the Canadian government makes decisions about how to move forward, we are happy to contribute our expertise. We look forward to continuing our assistance to Canadian communities and look forward to the committee's questions.
Well, thank you, President Benitez, and to all witnesses for your opening remarks. We are moving to our first round of questions now from members. Each party will have up to 6 minutes to ask the witnesses questions. We are starting with the Conservatives, and we have MP Fast up for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to all of our witnesses. I appreciate your willingness to appear. My first question is going to be to Mr. Benitez. Thank you for your testimony. You mentioned that 88% of funds originated in Canada, and over 80% of the donors were from Canada. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for that confirmation. Mr. Chair, yes, 88% of donated funds originated in Canada, and 86% of the donors to the campaign were from Canada.
There was some suggestion in the media and elsewhere that in funding the convoy, is there any evidence that that is the case as it relates to the fundraising that was done through GoFundMe?
Mr. Chair, when we did our analysis of the source of funds that were donated into this campaign, we worked closely with payment processing partners and related financial institutions to assess the source of the donations based on the financial instruments that were used. So, for example, a credit card number will have a BIN associated with it that then reflects the banking institution that had issued the credit card. And so we believe the analysis that we did in consultation with our payment processing partners is accurate. I would also add that proactively, we did do analysis on the other potential foreign sources of funds for this campaign, given the unprecedented nature of the campaign, the speed at which it had evolved, and the impact that it ultimately had on Canada and specifically the community in Ottawa. And we found, as reflected in the numbers shared with the committee as in my opening statement, that there just was not a significant foreign contribution.
Okay, so when you looked at the foreign contributions and the foreign donors, the less than 20%, whatever that might have been, maybe 22%, were there any large donors that would have stuck out, that would have raised red flags in terms of perhaps trying to influence the outcome of this protest?
We did not discover that, no. Mr. Chair, as we reviewed the donations, we did not identify significant donations or patterns that were there. I believe Ms. Wolford might know the largest donation that we took on the campaign from a non-Canadian source.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, thank you, Juan, and thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, what I would say is actually the largest donation in this campaign was from a Canadian, and it was in the amount of $30,000. I don't have the information.
That's the largest donation.
That was the largest donation, yes.
Okay, so we're not talking about $1 million donations that flowed in that try to influence events in Canada.
No, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for that. You also mentioned that you effectively froze the fundraiser once you discovered that there was, you referred to violence, harassment, there were a number of other concerns that you had. Where did that information come from? Was it from police authorities, other government authorities? Did it come from the media? How did you establish the fact that there was a credible evidentiary problem there with this convoy?
So thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, what I would say is that when this fundraiser was created on January 14th, it was within our acceptable terms of use. There was nothing in our original diligence around the fundraiser organizer or anything in the campaign content that suggested that it violated our terms. The donation velocity is what caused it to get the attention of our internal teams. And so the next day we started communicating with the fundraiser organizer and her team. It was on January 27th, as Mr. Benitez said, that we initiated the $1 million distribution from the campaign. On January 31st, our teams became aware of a statement by Ottawa Police that caused us to want to reach out to them and talk to them to receive credible information about what was actually occurring. There was a lot of misinformation around this campaign itself, around GoFundMe's role in this campaign. So we were trying to get credible, consistent information from authorities on the ground. So on the 2nd of February, our team spoke to the local law enforcement, Interim Police Chief Bell. On the 3rd of February, I myself spoke to Mayor Watson. And on the 4th, we again spoke to the local police in Ottawa. But as Mr. Benitez said, with that first conversation, talking to the local police, that's when we suspended the campaign on the 2nd of February. that stopped it from accepting any future donations, any future disbursements from going out. And then we continued to do our diligence until we realized it had violated our terms and removed it from the platform on the 4th.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have?
30 seconds, MP.
Okay, question, Mr. Volpe. You referenced a phony truckers cause and also inauthentic political actors. Can you expand on what you might mean by the term phony truckers cause?
Well, what we saw on the Ambassador Bridge is that the drivers who had goods in long-haul vehicles were the people who were being blocked from delivering them.
Right.
And that the people who were on the bridge were people with the closest association they had to trucks appeared to be the pickup trucks they drove to put in place in the middle of traffic. A different portfolio of vehicles blocked that road than we saw on Wellington Street.
But does that make
Thank you,
phony
MP
truckers?
Fast. That's the time. So we are moving to the Liberals, and we've got MP Chattel up for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for a witness to be here with us today. Just to give you a bit of context of where my concerns are and my question directed at GoFundMe. First, there were donations made to finance activities that were illegal and hurtful to our economy. Second, there were a number of foreign donations, and they increased as the illegal activities became more extreme and more hurtful to our economy and our residents of Ottawa, for example. 12% GoFundMe was identified as foreign source. It increased to nearly 50% once you close your account or your platform to those donations and GiveSendMe open for business. We also heard U.S. News challenge with news channels with different standards, quite frankly, in terms of integrity of information that incite 4 million plus viewers to donate and participate to those illegal activities. As part of the context, too, we know that Russia has been engaged in misinformation warfare for years, and we only have to look at the Mueller report to understand that. And they do have at their disposal, according to serious economic study, one being Cambridge, Massachusetts, $1 trillion of Russian dark money that is circulating, dedicated to undermine our democracy. So you accumulate $10 million from donors. The other platform, same thing, more foreign donation. You paid $1 million to organizer of blockades that occupied Ottawa and the bridge, and for the stated purpose of defying our democracy at a time where Russia was preparing for war. It's a context, and it could have been a lot worse if you did not act quickly and our government didn't act quickly. This can no longer happen, and I'm very glad to hear that you want to be a leader in protecting the integrity of the donation platform. So my question to you was about the source of the donation. I know you're not subject to the proceeds of crime legislation, but if you were, as we will definitely look at that, the international work right now on identifying the source is going to the ultimate beneficial owner of an account, because we know Russia and all other money launder, they are holding bank account in every country under several shell companies or even companies that appears legitimate. So what's your due diligence to look beyond the credit card holder?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chair. First, we appreciate the recognition that our collaboration with authorities and our work in responsibly handling this unprecedented, fast-moving, and complex fundraiser was recognized by the committee. So thank you. It continues to be our endeavor to be the most responsible platform, and we appreciate the recognition. I'd also like to remind the committee that 88% of funds was what we saw donated from Canada. the GoFundMe platform, and we cannot comment on what might have happened on other platforms that sought out to run this fundraiser after we shut it down. Our fundraising diligence does focus first on the recipient of funds, as would be common in the financial services ecosystem. That's where so-called KYC, or know your customer, checks and the greatest diligence occurs to know who will be receiving the funds and who owns the accounts that the funds will be deposited in. So to do that, we run a system of checks that GoFundMe employees do. We collaborate with our payment processors, who also perform diligence in their checks, and we oftentimes use their tools to perform that diligence about the funds recipients and the owners of those accounts. And then, of course, the banks themselves would also be verifying the identity and allowance, let's say, of whoever owned those accounts to be on their platform and receive those funds. On the donation side, donations can evolve quickly and rapidly. And so we do a risk-based review of donations based on tools that we have, tools from third parties, and our manual assessments that may happen. And we progressively do those reviews based on the nature of the campaign. In this case, an unprecedented, fast-moving campaign with significant impact. So we stepped up our donation reviews and proactively did that review of foreign sources. And so we feel comfortable with our policies and processes associated with those reviews.
And thank you for the answer. The 88% donation coming from Canada, was it enough for you to identify just a credit card holder in a bank account in Canada to satisfy yourself that they're Canadians? Or did you take the extra step to look, who's the bank account belonging to, and is it from another bank account, and in which case, go all the way down to the chain?
Thank you for that question. Mr. Chair, I think the amount of diligence that happens is based on our assessment of risk for a certain person. And then, like I mentioned, on scrubbing donations themselves, we do that on a risk-based approach to identify where the priorities should be. The general standard that we're aware of in the industry is reviewing the bank and the issuing bank of the payment information that's provided to us. No donations on the GoFundMe platform are anonymous. We have information provided from every donor. However, that information is subject to what is provided by the donor. And so the most correct information to trace down is, in fact, the issuing bank of the actual payment instrument. To go beyond that is substantial diligence and is quite complex, and in fact requires infrastructure and reliance on the banks themselves to have done that. So when I spoke earlier around multiple layers in the regulatory framework, that's where we would hope that ultimately the issuing bank of the credit card would be reviewing the owner of that card.
Thank you. And that's the time. We are moving to the block, and Monsieur Sainte-Marie for up to 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to wish a happy St. Patrick's Day to you all, and also greet the chair and say to what point I admire this magnificent tie he's wearing to celebrate the occasion. I would like to congratulate all your witnesses, and your comments are very important and appreciated. My first question is for Ms. Durden. First of all, thank you for the words, your kind words regarding our brothers and sisters in Ukraine that are going through so much right now. Thank you. That is appreciated. In your presentation, you stressed the fact that the major banking institutions, the Toronto banks, were briefed or received communiques from the government before the credit unions. Am I right?
Understanding that they did.
Est-ce que selon vous?
So, in your opinion, is there some sort of different treatment for credit unions that are placed in a more disadvantaged situation in relation to the major banks as far as working with the government?
That's not always the case, but I would say generally the government turns to who they regulate directly through OSFI, which is the banks, the financial institutions. Credit unions, as you know, most of them, except for two, are regulated provincially. And we tend to be a little bit behind in terms of getting information. So, for example, in the Emergency Act, credit unions were not given a heads up. As I understand that from the CBA's testimony, they were given a heads up ahead of time. We were not. We were scrambling when the act was announced to find out if we were part of it, if credit unions if it applied to credit unions. And it took us a little while to be able to get that information from the government.
Okay, merci.
Thank you. So there was a lot of uncertainty, because the role of our committee here is to look into what has taken place. We'll come up with a report, and I think there are things that we can improve. Thank you. You also said that the government did a briefing with you where there were 600 institutions attending this briefing. That's incredible. These institutions, did they have an opportunity to ask the questions? 600 attending the same conference. If you have a minute for each institution, that's impossible. Do I understand you right when you say that's what happened?
A briefing. Finance held a briefing. We asked them if they would hold a briefing for our credit unions. We had 600 participants. There are 220 odd credit unions in Canada outside of Quebec, not counting Desjardins. And we had a lot of interest from the compliance people at the credit unions, the risk managers. So there were much more people who attended this webinar than there actually are institutions. Questions, it was not a free-for-all. The questions were managed through the chat, and we tried to respond to most of them during the presentation.
Well, Monsieur Hatch, vous vouliez
Mr. Hatcher, you were about to add some information. Yes, thank you.
The pleasure of moderating that discussion. And you're absolutely right. It's impossible to manage hundreds of questions in an hour. But, it became clear, pretty quickly that most of the questions were under, 4 or 5 broad categories. So we did our best to address as many of them as possible with our colleagues at Finance, who did a fantastic job on very short notice. And we're very appreciative of those efforts. And then what we did after the fact, it was on a Friday, if I remember correctly, then early the following week, we were able to spend a few days looking at the questions, making sure we answered everything, and then we put together sort of a Q&A document that we were able to share. But, most of the questions, though there were dozens, if not hundreds, were under, a few broad categories that I think we were able to address during that session.
En tout cas, merci pour le.
Thank you for all the work you have put in. So what were your relations with the RCMP? We know the RCMP sent out a list of names of people whose accounts had to be frozen. The RCMP transmitted this list to the major banking institutions. Did they do so to all the credit unions at the same time?
We worked, because of the number of credit unions, of course, we worked directly with the RCMP as the association representing the credit unions. And we managed those lists from the RCMP, put them on a secure site that we have, and gave access to our credit unions to be able to pull those lists from the site.
Okay, très bien. Merci.
Okay, thank you. So if I understand you, the collaboration went on smoothly with the RCMP, and in your view, you were not given any differential treatment in terms of interventions compared to the major banking institutions. Yes, I would say so. Thank you. Thank you. That's interesting. Thank you.
And now we are moving to the NDP and MP Blakey for up to 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. So just along those same lines, speaking to Ms. Durden, I mean, credit unions provide a lot of banking services. We're glad that credit unions can still call the services they provide banking services, despite some of the debate over that with OSFI. Is there any, is there anything that distinguishes your banking services from the banking services of the larger banks from the point of view of the emergency measures orders that would mean that it's any less important to be communicating with credit unions in a timely manner than it is to communicate with the banks?
Well, I mean, credit unions is a lot smaller than the banks. Our market share is a lot smaller than that of the big six banks, obviously. But we do have an important part to play in provinces like Manitoba. Almost half of the market share is with credit unions. So, and we serve up to almost 6 million Canadians. So yes, that's a huge chunk of Canada, of consumers in Canada that need to be treated the same way as if they did their financial, if they had their financial services delivered by one of the large banks.
As my colleague mentioned earlier, I mean, the big part of our job here is to look at how these special powers were used and to make, recommendations in the event that similar powers are invoked in the future about how it can be done better. I just wonder if you have any concrete recommendations, either for the committee itself or recommendations that you believe we should consider making to government about how they might roll out these kinds of measures in a better way in the unfortunate case that these types of powers have to be used again.
Well, a couple of things that I mentioned in my opening remarks. I think making sure that credit unions are at the table at the same time is an important one. I think there is work that government could have done to be more clear about who they were actually targeting. As you know, there was a lot of misinformation in the first days, whether an individual made a $25 donation to the convoy, would their accounts be frozen? That kind of thing. It became clear, but over time, but it did take a few days for that to become clear. Michael, I don't know if you want to add anything. Those are two that come top of mind.
No, it bears repeating that in any such future situation, whenever the federal government has to pull the levers of the financial sector to accomplish its policy objectives, be it the Emergencies Act, be it the Canadian Emergency Business Account, the CEBA program in the early days of the pandemic, that they think beyond 6 institutions, that they consult on an equal footing with all of the financial sector. That is to say, not only federally regulated institutions, but also our sector.
Thank you very much. Two things that have been part of the discussion so far have had to do with what requirements, if any, financial institutions had to notify clients whose accounts had been frozen, whether they were frozen under the authority of the emergency measure order or under some other authority, and also what financial institutions are expected to do with that information or any potential flags on people's accounts who had been brought forward as folks whose accounts should have been frozen under the order. I'm wondering if you could give us your thoughts on each of those things, if there was any clear direction provided in either of those cases, either verbally or in writing, and if not, whether you think clear direction on those matters would be useful.
There wasn't any direction given clear direction given to us in writing or verbally, as I understand, to alert any individuals whose accounts had been frozen, and that was left up to the discretion of the financial institution. I think some clarity around that would probably be useful in the future, so that there is an even application across the country about that part of it. If it's left up to the discretion of the individual financial institution, I think they probably would handle it differently.
Okay, and then on the matter of what to do now that the emergency order has expired, was there any direction given verbally or in writing on whether the information that financial institutions have ought to be destroyed, whether it can remain on a file, any direction on whether it could continue to inform how the financial institution relates to that individual, whether it's appropriate to have it factor into a risk profile for future banking activities with that individual? Did your organizations receive any direction on that?
We did not.
And would you consider that kind of direction to be useful?
Well, I think financial institutions manage their own risk portfolios, and they have ways of flagging individuals or companies in their reporting to FINTRAC on whether there is a risk. They understand the relationships with individuals and with companies, particularly credit unions, because they tend to be smaller organizations. So I think some flexibility in that regard would probably be what I would recommend.
Thank you. And that's the time. Thank you, MP Blakey. Members, we are moving to our second round of questions. This round, we're starting with the Conservatives. It's MP Chambers. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome to our witnesses. Thank you for appearing and sharing your time and expertise with us this afternoon. I'd like to start following up on my colleagues, Mr. Blakey, Mr. St. Marie, with the credit unions. You mentioned that your members did in fact freeze accounts. Were there circumstances where your members refused to freeze an account?
Not as far as I know, no.
Okay, thank you. If you wouldn't mind just double checking that and getting back to us. There's some slight confusion as to whether that was a possibility or whether there's obligation to do so, but would be interested to know whether upon receiving evidence from the RCMP that an institution did not freeze an account.
So my understanding is that with the act is that the financial institution, upon information from the RCMP, was legally needed to comply with freezing the account.
Right. So your members would not have had a choice then, would they have?
That's right.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. And you mentioned a couple of times that it wasn't clear at the beginning about how narrowly or how broad this act was to apply, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And you did notice material or noticeable increase in withdrawal activity, subsequent to the act.
So I would say it's anecdotal, and there was some activity of withdrawals.
Okay. You're in the trust business. You're on the front lines dealing with clients. Obviously, they need to trust you to hold their money. And, I feel like you're well suited to answer this question. Do you think that there's been some erosion of trust between Canadians and government just after the act, or how maybe confusing it was at the beginning, or just some miscommunication, whether intentional or not? How do you think that's impacted how people feel about their financial security?
Well, based on the fact that anecdotally there was some withdrawals, and I know credit unions had to really answer a lot of questions from members about under what circumstances the government can freeze accounts, because many Canadians felt surprised that the government had that authority. So I wouldn't make a broad statement, but I would certainly say that for some that was an issue.
Thank you very much. Just moving to Give, Send, Go. Has your company ever ignored a court order?
Thank you for the question. And I just want to correct that we are GoFundMe. We are not Give, Send, Go.
Pardon me. My apologies. My apologies. Excuse that.
That's fine. Mr. Chair, what I would say is no. We operate within all the laws of all the jurisdictions where we are. We would never ignore a court order. So no.
Right. And that's exactly what I would expect. And I guess what I'm getting at is, had you been presented with a court order, it would have been conceivable you would have, complied with the court order should one have been presented, or if the authorities provided you with, relevant, jurisdictional requirements to freeze an account or take any action, correct?
That is correct based on, the facts and the circumstances of this case were so quickly evolving that once we had that credible, consistent information and we could see that the protest was turning in a way that violated our terms, that we removed it from our platform. So certainly if we had some sort of court order, an injunction of any kind telling us that was occurring, we would have complied.
Okay, thank you. Are all the campaigns that are, say, active today, do they all comply with your terms of use right now?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We have hundreds of thousands of campaigns, right? We are the world's largest, most well-known social fundraising platform. All of our campaigns are required to comply with our terms of use that clearly outline the permissive and prohibited conduct on the platform. When we become aware of issues through our reviews or through the help of the GoFundMe community, who can at any time report a fundraiser for any reason, we investigate all of those. And as circumstances change also, with the time that a campaign remains live on the platform, it may go from being within the permissible use on our platform to something not. And at that point, we will remove it.
Thank you. And you wouldn't have any ability to, or the capabilities to check that every single campaign on your platform would be compliant, correct?
In a very short answer, please.
Well, in fact, we use a number of tools and technology to ensure that, to the best of our abilities, that the campaigns are within the acceptable use on our platform.
Thank you. And that's the time. MP Chambers, we are moving to the Liberals. MP Zarowitz for 5 minutes, please.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the witnesses before us today. Thank you so much for your time. This is a very, very important meeting where we're looking at sort of the invocation of the Emergencies Act, and particularly around the economic order measures. So thank you for being here with us today. I just want to start off very quickly. I know that GoFundMe had indicated that a high percentage of the donations that came into them around the trucker, I'm going to put in quotes, trucker convoy, had come from Canadians. I do want to put on the record, though, Mr. Chair, and I think it's important to do so, that according to a February 14th Toronto Star article, it says nearly 41% of the more than 10.7 million donated to the Freedom Convoy, in quotes, through an online fundraising site has come from the United States, leaked data suggests. I think it's just very important to put that on the record because I don't want to leave people with the information that what we have found is that there has been sources that have validated that indeed foreign investment have gone into the Freedom Convoy.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
Ms. Zarowitz has purported to put evidence on the record. I hope that is not accepted as evidence, because quoting the Toronto Star based on speculation is not.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Fast. That's on a point of order. Ms. Zarowitz has the opportunity to make her comments freely. If she wants to cite where that evidence comes from, she can.
I hope she does.
Mr. Chair, I'm hoping that you don't sort of ding me for that not point of order, but it looks like Mr. Benitez might have something to respond to that. And then very quickly, Mr. Benitez, just because I'd like to go to Mr. Volpe.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to quickly clarify that the statistics and numbers that we're quoting here are the facts of what we observed and processed through the GoFundMe platform. It may be that media reports, I'm not familiar with the specific one, are related to, you did mention leaked data. We had no leaked data on GoFundMe. The leaked data came from information run on a different platform that was not GoFundMe. So that data is not our data.
No, and I'm sorry if Mr. Benitez, just in case you misheard me, I said it was the Give, Send, Go that was the leak data. It wasn't the GoFundMe. So if that did not come across clearly, I want to clarify that for the record. So thank you for that. So it was not you, and I wasn't disputing what you said, and I wasn't disputing your numbers at all. It was more another platform. And I just didn't want to leave the public who might be listening that there is evidence that there was a foreign contribution into the Freedom Convoy. Mr. Volpe, turning over to you, you were very clear and articulate around the economic impact of the blockade of the Ambassador Bridge on the economy as well as to workers. What damage did the blockades have on Canada's international reputation? And if they were not stopped through some measures like the Emergencies Act, what would the additional blockades or renewed blockades have done?
The automotive industry in Canada is very integrated with the American industry. $50 million worth of auto parts cross the Ambassador Bridge every day, and about 50 million come back in the other direction. The blockade stopped plants, car maker plants in Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Kentucky, and further afield in Tennessee. At the time that Canada is currently negotiating with the United States on its electrification plan and where those federal investments and those assets, their critical mineral assets, are sourced from, the blockade event at the bridge highlighted to American lawmakers that they are vulnerable to an interruption. Because of that, of course, we have now been debating publicly with Michigan-based lawmakers who have who had introduced an original EV tax credit plan that was to be America only, and the blockade has given them fuel for their arguments. The industry that I represent is 120 years old in this country, and it has built a continental spine that does not operate with the border as a risk. It is now part of that discussion.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if you were able to answer this, but from your perspective, what was unusual about sort of the blockade that you saw at the Ambassador Bridge? Was there anything unusual about it?
Sure. First of all, it was publicly disavowed by the Canadian Trucking Alliance and the Ontario Trucking Association. The major logistics companies that our companies use, the bonded companies, all have publicly expressed that they had 100% vaccination policy for their drivers, and those drivers who did not vaccinate, they would reassign for inter-country shipments. The people on that bridge had self-identified as truckers, but that doesn't typically meet an evidentiary standard. You know, by that measure, that protest could have been a shinny hockey protest or a restaurant worker protest or a Canadian Conservative Party protest, given that it was encouraged by those leaders or participated in by people who come from different walks of life. None of that blockade was done with long-haul trucks or by organizations that are in long-haul trucking.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you, MP Zerwitz. That's your time. We are moving to the block, and MP Sainte-Marie for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Fonseca. Mr. Volpe, I think it's shocking, the consequences on the economy that these blockades have had. And your testimony really affects us even on an emotional level. Businesses in the United States were greatly affected by these blockades. A colleague said a few minutes ago that the government acted very fast. Now, when you wait 3 weeks before acting and you allow things to degenerate, I disagree. So in your opinion, should the government have intervened much faster rather than waiting 3 weeks to intervene?
Well, it certainly was our publicly expressed opinion at the beginning of the Ambassador Bridge blockade that there were existing laws that law enforcement on the ground could have enforced, and they appeared paralyzed. Both the municipal and provincial law enforcement agencies that dealt with the roads that led to that bridge. We were in direct contact with officials at all 3 levels of government, and what we did was implore them that we thought that the Highway Traffic Act was in place and could have, if it was enforced, could have addressed this crisis right when it started. After it closed the first day, we immediately went to court as lead plaintiff, joined by the City of Windsor and then the Attorney General's office in Ontario joined us as interveners. I think this is a case study in what a 1 or 2 or 3 day delay means in law enforcement. A delay in law enforcement of that time means to a dynamic but fragile economy, and certainly I think that there are lessons to be learned by every single agency and level of government here.
Oh, merci, c'est très.
Thank you for those clarifications. So there was a legislative framework that would have allowed intervention, but I do note that there was a lack of political will. So we hope that this doesn't reoccur. Thank you for your answers, Mr. Chair. I believe my time is finished.
MP Samari, that is right on time. We're moving to the NDP and MP Blakey for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you to Mr. Benitez and Ms. Wilford. It seems to me that one of the consequence of GoFundMe, shutting down the fundraiser on its platform, is that the activity shifted to another crowdsourcing platform, and so that's maybe lost business for GoFundMe. It's also GoFundMe, successfully discharging a certain amount of risk in the business that it was doing in respect of that organization. But from a public interest point of view, it wasn't mission accomplished because it meant that the activity that was a problem could continue. So I'm wondering if you have any reflections for the committee on the state of the crowdsource funding industry. I think we want to avoid a situation where good actors who are doing their due diligence are punished or perceive themselves to be punished because because the problem itself isn't being dealt with, but it means that somebody else is doing the work and getting paid to do work that arguably shouldn't be done. And so I wonder if you have any comments for us on the nature of the industry and whether some kind of additional regulation is required in order to make sure that we're rewarding good actors and not simply shifting business away from good actors and still having the same activities be supported by the crowdsourcing industry.
Thank you so much for that question, Mr. Chair. Social fundraising is actually a relatively new phenomenon. Right? GoFundMe was founded in 2010. Our mission is to help people help each other. Right now, with the Ukraine crisis, we've raised, just since the invasion, over $50 million from over 140 countries. Right. So as you say, it's wonderful how people can come together to help one another in their times of need. And so we want to make sure that we don't do anything here that would impact that. But at the same time, to your point, there aren't any existing laws or regulations, to my knowledge, that directly regulate peer-to-peer crowdfunding that's done on platforms. What we do see in other regions around the world, we see the regulation falling on the fundraiser organizer, the person who's actually responsible for soliciting the donations. In some jurisdictions, those individuals are required to get permits or government approval before they start fundraising. In other jurisdictions, like Singapore, we see voluntary codes of practice that their online fundraising platforms are asked to adhere to that outline best practices for protecting users and certain prevention against data leaks and privacy rights and early fraud detection, things like that. I'm only really aware of one country, that's Romania right now, that puts a regulation on the donors. It has to do with the amount of the donation. If you try to raise over $200 US on a form and you paperwork with the Romanian government and go through a different process. So the data privacy.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we are well over the time, but thank you, MP Blakey. We are moving to the Conservatives, MP Lawrence, for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I'll start with you, Mr. Volpe.
And so I was struck by some of your early testimony that you stated that the vaccine mandate for truckers was causing some challenges. The reason is I was just in Peterborough with a factory there, and they stated to me that their cost of shipping had increased by 5 times, and they ascribed that specifically to the Trudeau trucker vaccine mandate. Is that affected your members?
Certainly, the cost of trucking had gone up. What we've seen is that was around 10 to 15%. I'd be curious to hear what they're actually shipping in Peterborough and who's shipping it. But volume suppliers who have the trucks picking up hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, we're definitely seeing a linear relationship with the shortage of drivers that's before the mandates and the potential new shortage, and that we thought that number totally could have been about 20%. We're also an integrated industry. That cost was the exact same on the other side of the border. That in fact, Canada's new mandates were a reaction or a reflection of a similar American mandate.
Thank you for that, Mr. Volpe. Yeah. So we did see a sizable increase in the cost due to the trucker mandate. Thank you for that. I just want to now turn to GoFundMe just briefly, and I just want to just have an opportunity for you to have an opportunity to clarify. With respect, I think one of my colleagues was a little bit irresponsible in talking about speculation of connection with the Russian government. In your search, in the way that you review transactions, did you uncover any connection between the illegal protests or blockades and the Russian government?
When we were, well, thank you for the question, and Mr. Chair, I'm glad that Ms. Wilford also referenced were contributions that may be negative, that there are tremendous amounts of foreign contributions are very positive to campaigns. I believe over 80 countries contributed to the Humboldt Broncos campaign. For this campaign, we did review the source of donations extensively, given the size and impact of this campaign, as we said before. And there were 12% of the donations came from outside of Canada. And there was virtually only perhaps a handful at most of donations from Russia. So there was, in our opinion, and the evidence we see, there was just no coordinated effort there to have any kind of contribution or impact.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your testimony and for helping people across the world there. We appreciate that. Ms. Durden, if I could just to finish off with yourself there, I think you were put in a very difficult situation, and I think many of your credit unions were, because when you review the actual Emergency Measures Act, it said that the accounts could be frozen for any designated person, and a designated person could include anyone who directly or indirectly supported. And as the finance official said in testimony, even a $50 donation might qualify. And so you were put in a position without instructions in order to freeze that, to freeze accounts. So and I know my colleagues asked some questions, but I'm wondering if I can get a little bit more clarity, exactly what instructions you were given, when you were given, and by who you were given the instructions with respect to the freezing of your members' bank accounts.
Michael, do you want to take that question? You were on the front line of that more than I was.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's difficult to go back and recall the minute by minute and day by day in the heat of the crisis. But the minister's office ultimately made clear that credit unions were to be captured by the invocation of the Emergencies Act and the financial sector measures contained therein. And it was also clear to us, like we had said before, that the large banks perhaps had a few days head start, not on the details, but at least on the fact that something of this nature was coming. I reviewed the testimony of the Bankers Association when they appeared at this committee, and they indicated that while they knew a few days ahead of time that something of this nature was coming, they didn't get the details until the regulations were published publicly, which is when we all saw them, which was Wednesday or Thursday of that week. I don't remember the precise timing, but there was a good I would say 36 to 48 hour period in the middle of that week where there was a great deal of confusion with regards to whether or not A, this would apply to us, and B, what would be the nature of that application.
So for new
MP.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry, Mr. Chair. Am I done?
Yeah, that's 5 minutes. Thank you, MP Lawrence. We're moving to the Liberals, and I have MP Baker up for 5 minutes. MP Baker. Okay. MP Baker, can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, great.
How much time do I have?
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for being here today, and I'd like to say a few things, and then I'll ask a few questions. First of all, I would like to thank you, Ms. Durden, for what you said at the outset about the work that your credit union community is doing, especially the Ukrainian credit unions in Canada. I, like our chair, have a Ukrainian credit union located in my riding, but have worked closely with the Ukrainian credit union and with Baduchny's credit union over the years on a range of community initiatives. And one of the things that has always impressed me about credit unions, whether it be those two or others, is the extent to which they give back to their communities. And so I'd ask you to pass along my thanks to those two in particular, but to the others as well for what they do, not just from a financial service perspective, but also for our communities across Canada, and especially in mine in Etobicoke Centre. The second thing I wanted to say was that you shared your solidarity with the people of Ukraine, and I know that that feeling is unanimously shared amongst the MPs in the House of Commons. We've seen that repeatedly. One of the things that I wanted to sort of ask of you and of our friends at GoFundMe, and is that we do all we can. As legislators, we need to do what we can, but also that private sector entities and players do all that they can to show our solidarity with not just the people of Ukraine, but others who are fighting for their freedom and their democracy. And so this isn't a question, maybe just a request, is that as you go back from today's hearing, that you've heard some questions about the role of dark money and foreign money and money from Russia in particular, but there are other sources of those types of funds. And I would just ask you, both your organizations and the organizations that you represent, Ms. Durden, to think about what more we can do to make sure that those funds that are flowing and that are influencing, undermining a democracy or feeding misinformation or undermining our security or enabling what we're seeing right now in Ukraine, it gets stopped. And I know it's not easy. I know it's challenging, but I just implore you that we live up to those words with our actions to the extent possible. And that applies to us as MPs, of course, but I ask all of you to do the same if I could, whether that's through your analytic tools, whether that's through innovative and entrepreneurial thinking. One of the reasons that those credit unions are working so hard to raise money for humanitarian causes, one of the reasons that GoFundMe has raised so much money right now for humanitarian causes, is because this invasion has been enabled. And part of that has been because of the use of illicit funds around the world. And we have plenty of evidence to support that. I'm not pointing to specific money that's flowed to specific causes. I don't have those analytics, but I'm just saying in general, we know that this is a problem, and I just ask you to do your best. So that's my request of you. My question, Ms. Durden, is really to you around the invocation of the Emergencies Act. And I think one of the things that was a question is about the notice given to people whose accounts were frozen. Mm-hmm. And so there's obviously a range of circumstances when someone's account may be frozen, like if they refuse to pay their taxes, for example, or if a financial institution notices something suspicious in their account. It's my understanding is that it's also standard procedure for the credit union or the bank or whatever the case may be not to necessarily notify a client whose account has been frozen under those circumstances. And I guess so. Is that correct? Am I wrong in understanding that? Is notice immediately given? And if not, for what reasons do financial institutions not immediately provide that notice?
I would have to say that under the circumstances of the Emergency Act, there wasn't a directive given to credit unions to notify if our accounts were frozen. And I'd also like to clarify, if a credit union finds us suspicious about transactions, they don't freeze the account for that reason. They report it to FinTrack, and then FINTRAC takes action whether they need to with the RCMP, which would perhaps end up in a court order. And that's when a credit union would freeze an account. The Emergencies Act overrode that, as you know, and made that court order unnecessary in these circumstances. I can say that credit unions in a lot of cases, and again, it's anecdotal, I'd have to go back and get the information for you, did have conversations with their members and freezing their accounts. In fact, there was one live feed, a tweet that I saw where someone whose account was frozen, he actually broadcast the phone call from the credit union to announce that his account had been frozen. So he had been notified. So it is at the discretion of the organization. I would say that credit unions who are closer to their members than perhaps some big, large financial institutions would have a relationship and would have a conversation with their clients or their members.
Thank you. And thank you, MP Baker. And that's the time. And members, I'm just looking at the time. We have approximately 12 minutes left. And as we do with our final round, when we have limited time, we divide it equally. So looking at about 3 minutes per party. We'll start with the Conservatives, and I have MP Albus up for those 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll start by asking questions directed at President Flavio Volpe. Mr. Volpe, happy birthday. I'm sorry you have to spend it with me. I wouldn't want to spend my birthday with me, but I have to. I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about the mandates and some of your experiences as your organization. So ultimately, the Windsor-Detroit Bridge was cleared under provisions provincially, not federal. Is that correct?
It was cleared under orders from an injunction that we sought in Superior Court at Windsor.
Okay, so you went alongside with the City of Windsor as well as the province, and then a court order was sought, and then you received that, and that's where the authorities came in. Is that correct?
Sure, we went as the plaintiff, and then a day later, the city and the province joined the injunction.
Okay, that's fair enough. You mentioned that there was existing authorities under the Highway Traffic Act enforcement. That's the Ontario legislation. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the same act that says you can't park in the middle of the 401.
Okay. All right. You also mentioned earlier that the latest hurdle, and I am referring to the mandates, is your organization still opposed to the mandates in general?
Well, I wasn't opposed to them. What we said was we need to be sensitive that there will be a cost. And I also said that we were willing to take that as the cost of doing business, but we needed to be sensitive to it.
Okay. Was it more based on that both the United States and Canada had their own rules on it, and it was going to cause some issues with logistics, et cetera, just the extra costs?
Yeah, what will end up happening is if you've got less drivers, 20% less drivers, and the cost of those drivers, I said publicly, auto parts suppliers would have to outbid, pork producers or other shippers at the time. So that drove up the price for sure.
Yeah. So your comments on being, the government that you need to be cautious and flexible. It was just that you understood the reality that the governments were regulating in this case, but it wasn't. Because truckers, for the most part, had 2 years where essentially they were doing all the work crossing from both countries. For 2 years, they did so without a mandate.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to move, thank you very much for that, just briefly over to the credit union. Ms. Durden, thanks for the work that you and Michael do. Just a quick question in regards to the treatment. I just want to reiterate some of my colleagues have said. It seemed that during this pandemic and even to today, it seems that credit unions seem to be left out. You were left out of the Canadian Emergency Business Account. And it took several weeks for you to get in where your members could have on that. And again, it seems to be the same process here. Is it a structural thing in Ottawa where credit unions just are not given the same access to department officials? What's your view on this?
Just a quick answer, please.
It's just I think it's just that the government doesn't automatically think of credit unions, where we seem to be an afterthought in many cases. We do have good access to finance officials, but we have to be the instigators. We have to be the ones knocking at the door.
Thank you. Thank you, MP Albas. We're moving to the Liberals. MP Chattel for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Look, disinformation warfare is absolutely real. There's no doubt in our mind. It enticed people to donate for causes that are harmful to our democracy. And my conservative colleague is at best very naive to think that misinformation to undermine democracy does not exist, and especially from people now noticeably repeating Russian propaganda. But I wanted to continue with Mrs. Wilford. You have started to answer a very good answer from the question my colleague, Mr. Blakey, asked you earlier. We all aware of the issues and the danger and the risk posed by the financing, illicit financing, and the use of money. And we wanted to make sure that those platforms indeed are used for the good cause. And what especially are your recommendation to make sure that we ensure the integrity of those platforms and the use of those money being raised? And you were starting to quote certain foreign legislation that are perhaps ahead of us in terms of ensuring those such integrity. So may you please continue to enlighten us on those practices?
Well, thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, I wish I was that sort of expert that you may think. What I can say is I am pretty well versed in the regulations for the jurisdictions where we operate and other markets where we decide to go into or where our donors are coming from. And so there are, what I was trying to say last time is that there are a number of laws right now protecting users and the platforms. So you have everything from privacy and data security, consumer protection regulations. Our payment processors and the banks are all bound by their own financial regulations. They report to FinTech, as we know. They report to FinCEN in the US. There's just a number of regulations that do exist. At the same time, we're always trying to provide the most safe and secure experience for our users and believe that in being a responsible platform, it's also helping them understand some of the laws that are in the existing jurisdictions where they are donating from. So as I was saying, in some jurisdictions, we see that fundraising for charity is quite regulated, right? We see that you need to actually go to the government to get a permit to do that in places like Australia, in places like Denmark, in places like Finland. We see in Singapore, they have this voluntary code of best practices that they look for the online platforms to sign up to. And then the platform puts that on their website as a badge of honor, right? We comply and they get audited by the government so that the users and the citizens can feel like that the checks and balances are in place.
Thank you.
And then, as I was saying, Romania is really the only one I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean others don't exist, but where they limit the donation amount. So they're actually looking to regulate the donor. I mean, the issue is that—
Thank you. And I apologize, but that is the time, MP Chattel. We are moving to the block, and MP Samari for up to 3 minutes.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Fonseca. A question for Ms. Durden and Mr. Hatch. The accounts that your credit unions have frozen or did freeze, is this just based on the RCMP lists you received, or did your institutions freeze other accounts?
My understanding is that they followed the very closely aligned to the list provided by the RCMP.
Okay, très bien.
Okay, thank you. When I read the decree that came with the Emergencies Measures Act, I don't think it's very clear. It's kind of vague, especially in terms of directives provided to the financial institution. The Department of Finance said they did not really transmit any written rules, that things were just done verbally. When I read that, I said, well, what do we do about the joint accounts, about alimony, rent, and so on? It's much broader. The fact that the Department of Finance did not provide you any clear written directives, was that a problem for you?
Thank you for that question. I think, Mr. Chair, that because it happened so quickly, the Emergency Act was put in place on the 15th of February. It was revoked again on the 23rd. That those kinds of issues would probably just be starting to arise. So, and had it been extended longer, they would have had to address those particular issues. But it became really a moot point because it was withdrawn.
Merci, Monsieur Hatch.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Would you have a comment to add?
Only very briefly that some of those technical questions with regards to joint accounts and other types of accounts were raised in the briefing session on the Friday with finance, and they did do a good job of answering them. So while that was not provided in writing, it was provided verbally. And also, I think ultimately the fact that only 10 accounts across our entire sector were frozen speaks to the fact that, this was obviously very, very targeted. The freezing of accounts is a very serious matter that our members take very seriously, and it was intended to be targeted by the government and also by our members.
Okay, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe my time is exhausted. Thank you.
Merci, MP Samari. And we're moving to the NDP and MP Blakey. MP Blakey, you'll be our last committee member to ask questions for this session.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to go back to Ms. Wilford. I'm just curious, coming out of this experience that we lived here in Canada and the use of the Emergencies Act, have you identified any shortcomings at least from your perspective in the Canadian regulatory framework? Are there any recommendations that you would have for us as a committee to consider, or recommendations that you think we should consider making to government around your industry? And particularly when issues like the kinds of issues that we saw, so, national security issues or others come to light, government develops a concern. Are there any regulations or directions that you think we should consider recommending to government?
Thank you. I'll start with that question. Mr. Chair, I think, at GoFundMe, we're experts in social fundraising, and we're not public policy experts. We would welcome the opportunity to contribute our expertise in what we observe on our platform, our policies, our procedures, how we police our platform and regulate, as we've talked today, and how that can influence the regulation. But we believe that would be a collaborative discussion, given that we would need to be work closely with, you all who are the public policy experts.
Okay. So no concerns for you coming out of the Canadian experience, how it happened.
Certainly for us, I think we're continually evolving our platform, our policies, our tools, our procedures. I believe we improve month by month, and we need to, because the use of platform and the evolution of the internet and collaboration, and frankly, the crises of the world that people look to assist communities and help others via GoFundMe are always evolving and changing. And so in this case, we look back at the timeline of the events, the complexity of the fundraiser, the rapid evolution of the fundraiser organizer, the people involved, and we feel comfortable about our actions, and we believe that our proactive engagement with local law enforcement was appropriate. Our termination of the fundraiser 10 or 11 days before the Emergencies Act was invoked, we feel comfortable with our actions on all that. So we believe our policies and procedures, stood this test, and will continue to evolve and improve them over time.
And no concern about competing with other actors in the space who don't share the same standard?
I mean, I would just say that as as the most recognized platform, we're the most responsible one. We operate within the law and in many cases above the law. So we hope that that's a reason that one of many that we stand out and that people around the world use us to come together and help one another. And so as my colleague said, as you look to figure out ways on how to address what occurred, we would welcome the opportunity to collaborate with you and discuss different sorts of regulations or controls that can be put in place that would ensure that we continue to provide the safest and most secure environment for our users and for everyone who wants to come together to help one another in the world. Right? We want to make sure that we don't thwart the good that happens, and I think that's been recognized. As I was saying, I mean, just the outpouring of support we see for Ukraine, we saw it for Afghanistan, we see it for climate disasters that occur all over the world. I mean, online fundraising is actually a really beautiful thing, and there are a ton of regulations already in place to protect the users. But certainly, if the government and the committee here desires to have further collaboration, we would welcome that opportunity.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for that, and thank you, MP Blakey. And just on behalf of all the members, the committee, the clerk, the interpreters, the staff, we want to thank our excellent witnesses. Thank you for your remarks, your testimony, your answers to our many questions, to helping inform our Emergency Measures Act study. So we thank you on behalf of the committee. Thank you today, and of course for joining us here on St. Patrick's Day and Flavio Volpe's birthday. So thank you very much, everybody.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, everyone.
And
happy birthday.
Yeah. And members, I will now suspend to go to the in-camera portion of the meeting. Members will need to leave this Zoom meeting and join the second Zoom meeting with a different link. Both links can be found on the email that the clerk sent earlier today. Just seeing if there are any questions from members before we suspend and move to our in-camera session. No? Okay, I will see you on the other side.